So I'm making this video today to kind of talk about the design of this. I'm going to call it the Gen 2.5 of Beyblade. So the reason this project was even developed was to come up with like a easy bring your kid to work day station. So the idea was have kids come around and build a Beyblade kind of like this, and have it be simple for them to pick out pieces, put them together, also be cheap enough for us to put on. And so that's why some of the design choices were made, and I just kind of wanted to explain some of the design choices and why things were done the way that they were. So I'll go ahead and start off with just the top, or the attack ring of the top. So the biggest thing to notice here is that it's not like the Gen 1s. It's more similar to the Gen 2, where you have kind of a lip that's in this top plastic piece of the top that holds on to the launcher when it is getting launched. So I went ahead and found a 3D file that already existed for just a stock launcher, and then I took the teeth and then just moved them out a little bit to fit around the chip that's in the center, because I wanted to keep that kind of customizability there, especially for kids. Kids like stickers. So if you try to take a 2.5 launcher is what we'll call it, and attach it to a Gen 2, it just will not work. The teeth are too wide to fit into that spot. So, forewarning, this custom launcher will not work with Gen 2 Beyblades. It will only work for the 2.5 is what I'll call it. So one thing that you will have to watch out for when printing the tops is maybe if you have some extra material here on the bottom. This is where the bottom of the top hooks onto the spin gear in here. So this lip on the bottom has to sit within this track to kind of attach the top and put it all together. The second piece here is the weight ring. So this is one of the hardest pieces to find. Maybe not the hardest, but it's expensive to find these. Here's a stock one. This is a Gen 2 weight ring. I wanted to replicate this. I went ahead and just found a plastic model of one that already existed, and then I just added BBs into the design to give it some weight, because that was one of the biggest things that you have to add to these tops. Is Gen 2 has obviously the big metal weight ring, and these ones have a big metal weight ring as well, but looking at 3D printing, you can't really add weight in a good way without spending a whole lot of money. So this was my design choice. So these are just BBs here. These are some steel BBs that are 4.5 millimeter, commonly used in a pellet gun. I think I got these for $10 or less at the time. So you can make quite a lot of these for fairly cheap. All you have to do to make these is it's a half and half design. So you print one half out, you put your BBs inside, and then you glue it together. The next thing is the spin gear. So this is one part that I really didn't have to mess a whole lot with. There was already an existing design out there, and all I actually had to do to it was I kind of cut it and made it taller. So I increased the height by 0.6 millimeters just to give it a little bit of relief for tolerances when you get a top that might just not fit quite right without removing too much material. So I went ahead and just made another one of these that is just a little bit taller. Kind of moving on is from there is just the bases. So some of these existed. This was a stock one that I did find online, I think on Thingiverse. And I was able to take this and kind of just expand on it. I made ones like this where I added a nice kind of a defensive ring on the outside of it. It also allows for this ring to fit inside. Another important thing to remember if you're going to use these and not the stock Gen 1 ring is that there is a lip in here, right in here, where material is removed in the print so that you can fit around the spin gear a little bit easier. It gives you some relief here when you're going to put the top on. So this expanded spin gear here will help you with fitting these in here because this is thicker than this. So if you're going to go ahead and use the stock ring, you are fine using just the normal spin gear that I'll include in the downloads. But if you're going to use my design here of the ball bearing plastic one, you're gonna want to use this most likely just because it's thicker. From there, I'll move on to the tips. The tips, I did find a lot of them online. They're kind of one of the smaller pieces that a lot of people like to play with just because they affect the top's movement so much, and they obviously fit right onto the Gen 2. These ones can fit onto Gen 2. I think I was printing these at about 95%. You'll have to just play around with it. You want a tight fitting tip onto the top because obviously you don't want that flying off when it's spinning and doing its thing. So the plastic obviously will wear down a little bit over time depending on what material you print with, but most likely it'll wear down on the inside, and so you want a slightly tight fit on for the tip, just so you can make sure that it doesn't fly off. Lastly, I'll talk about kind of the launcher difference. So I mentioned that I went ahead and made my own custom launcher here. And this is kind of just represent, I reprinted an original Gen 1 launcher head. I do have these, like the actual original Gen 1 launcher, but I just don't have it out right now. But the hard part with the launcher was making sure that we had enough for kids, and maybe a kid would run off with one. So I wanted it to be cheap, wanted it to be easy to replicate. So I went ahead and made the 3D printed one that would fit onto a Gen 2 stock launcher. Reason being is that you can find these launchers a lot easier than you can the Gen 1s. The Gen 1s can fetch from $5 to $10 and up a piece, and that's, you know, sometimes without a ripcord with it. So these can be found just about as well as the stock launcher, but the stock launchers are stock Gen 2 launchers are so much cheaper to find, and I'll include some examples here just to show you what I mean. So one thing I did forget to mention here was these, I recommend the launcher heads. I recommend printing on their side. So I have another one over here. Print it so your layer lines are running across. I'll include them in the print files and the orientation that they should be printed, but you want the layer lines running this way across these forks, and it ends up with it kind of being a little bit messy on the sides, but you want it running sideways to give the forks the most support. I had issues with these launchers kind of breaking. This was made with a stronger material than PLA. I believe it is PETG carbon fiber. So just keep that in mind when you go to print these. I did go away from the Gen 1 launcher also because of how big these forks are. I mean, this test went okay. Obviously, this one is still together, but I have multiple that we have that just did not work out. So for consistency's sake, I just went with this design for the tops, just to make it easy. So one last thing that I forgot to mention about the tips. I do recommend using kind of an annealing technique here to smooth out these tips. You can take some rubbing alcohol. I think I have some over here. Rubbing alcohol or like a nail polish remover with acetone in it will usually do the trick to just smooth out some of these layer lines. It's not as much of a big deal for the rounded ones because they end up kind of wearing that point of contact down. But when you get into more of the attack based tips, the ones that are straight flat across the top, you want that surface to be as uniform as possible to help that top act aggressive. Similar to these, this is completely flat top. There's no, competing layer lines in here. These are obviously made different. So we want this to be as close as possible to these. You can go ahead and use the Gen 2 launcher tips on these, but making your own is more fun, and that's what this was all about. So I'll do a quick demonstration here just on how to put these together. They go together just the same as the Gen 1 tops do. So you're gonna twist the top to the right here to take the top off, and then you're gonna twist it back left once this is in the slot here to put it back on. These ones are going to go on a little bit tighter. This was made with PLA. It tends to flex a little bit when you go to tighten it, but after you work it in there, it'll get easier over time. You may have to remove, some material here on just kind of that lip. You can kind of see where it's worn away here. You want it to fit in there as easy as possible. Like I said, you might have to do some editing here, some shaving down on these corners just to get it to go on there. So like I said before, we take this guy, make sure that the divots are down, and then take our top. And then it spins right on. So this usually fits pretty tight, the weight ring in here. It does have a little bit of play to it, but nothing to worry about. And then you can use your fingers just to put these on. This should fit on pretty easy. Maybe the first time it might take you a second to kind of find the groove and stick it on there. But here you can see it goes on pretty easy. So I'll do a demonstration next to show you how it launches, how it works. I got this top specifically to go up to about 2 minutes in length, which was great compared to some of the Gen 1 original Beyblades. I believe when I did these, I was getting anywhere from 1 minute to 2 minutes. This is obviously more of a stamina based build, and having that ball bearing on the bottom does help a lot. Couple things I have to mention is that we actually didn't get to do this event, sadly. So we did a lot of planning, a lot of work, and the event has not happened yet. Maybe it will in the future, but these Beyblades aren't like fully combat tested, so use them at your own risk. I recommend, if you print using tougher material here, that this will hold together a lot easier. I do have some tests where the edges of some sharper designs kind of chipped off here. I have used this one in some battle tests, but this is not an aggressive attack ring on the top, so I wasn't really worried about it chipping in the way that some others did. One last minute thing, I did not mention these pegs here that are from the Gen 1 design. So these just attach right into the sides here after you put your spin track in here. So after this goes into the center of the top, you'll just go ahead and insert these pegs here on into these sides here. So as you can see, this has them inserted. They fit in here pretty tightly, so sometimes you actually need to take like a screwdriver here and just kind of, you know, grab one and rip it out. And I know I did say earlier in the video that you're probably okay using just kind of the stock one that I found online. I would go ahead and use the expanded one more often than not, just doing some test fitting, especially with like these designs where everything kind of fits tighter. I would go ahead and use the 0.6 millimeter expanded one. I did insert kind of an inlay in here to differentiate the two models, so that shouldn't be an issue. So I'm making this in post. Just wanted to go over the launcher assembly quick. So when you take apart a stock launcher, all you'll have to do is remove the screw that is sitting within the center here. You'll find this small white piece. You'll just want to fit that into your 3D print. They should be identical looking to the actual stock one, and then you'll just place that back on until it sits in there, and then replace the screw, and you should be good to go.